You want to talk about backwards thinking and reverse philosophy, there's one king, and that king is Rush. So the next clip we're going to call Ditto Rush. And why? Because the people that listen to him are a bunch of ditto heads. They just repeat things. They never think. They just repeat. And this is the problem. And if they go to look anything up, where do they look it up? On a conservative site. So they have a conservative bias. And why? And this is how guys like Dave Rinelli can get away with putting up their BS on talk radio in Danbury. Because the thing is, no one will challenge him and no one will ask him to get specific. And that's all you have to do. They won't know what to do. Why? Because they don't accept science. You know, they just refuse to accept science. And why? Because the fossil fuel industry has bought them. And guys, the one clip we're going to play from we're not going to play it, but we're going to talk about from WLAD was about Rush and global warming. But before we get to do that, we're going to play Rush by himself with his 10 biggest lies. So Judy, let's have clip number 25, please.
Excuse me?
A lot of people say, you really believe the stuff you say? I don't know, it's for you to figure out.
Limbaugh was telling people for years, you're right to be prejudiced. You're right to be angry. Listen to what the feminazis are telling you now. Or these environmental wackos who say that cigarettes secondhand smoke, you know, and then he'll make up some study.
One day, years ago, when my dad was at the height of his Limbaugh lunch days, I went down to visit my parents, and my mom and dad and I went to our favorite restaurant, Old Time Tavern. As we were walking towards the restaurant door, there was a bench outside where several people were seated smoking. As we passed them, my dad stopped to talk to them. He inhaled the smoke and said, I love the smell of cigarette smoke. It reminds me of the time I used to smoke. I was stunned because the only thing I ever remember my dad smoking was the occasional pipe. He also hated wearing seatbelts and would absolutely refuse to wear one even after he got a ticket. Something told me it had to do with Rush Limbaugh.
He wasn't just wrong factually, he would take like reality upside down. He became what we call a champion of the overdog. Any powerful group that was being criticized by scientists or medical people was the victim. So the tobacco industry was a victim. And that's where he came up with his concoction that, you know, no one's ever proved that nicotine is addictive or is linked to these horrible diseases. There's no science involved. And, you know, cigarettes, secondhand smoke, making you go outside of the restaurant to smoke, it's not true. Here's the real facts, and then he comes up with his false facts. You don't like seatbelts? It's Ralph Nader. He made up this stuff.
Ladies and gentlemen, the top 10 Limbaugh lies. Number 10, there are more Native Americans alive today than when Columbus arrived. Number 9, the government is going to have the right to get into your bank account with the health care bill and make transfers without you knowing it. Number 8, Egyptian husbands will soon be legally allowed to have sex with their dead wives for up to 6 hours after their death. Number 7, President Barack Obama shut down the NASA space flights and turned the agency into, quote, a Muslim outreach department, end quote. Number 6, the United States has more forest land than it did in 1787. Number 5, President Obama wants to mandate circumcision. Number 4, there's no conclusive proof that nicotine's addictive, and the same thing with cigarettes causing emphysema, lung cancer, and heart disease. Number 3, if the ice caps melted, the ocean level wouldn't rise. Number 2, styrofoam is biodegradable. Number 1, I'm not making this stuff up, folks.
How can all these people believe such outlandish statements? But it wasn't just like my dad or Barbara's brother or Maria's uncle who believed Rush Limbaugh that troubled me.
Clarence Thomas, one of our Supreme Court justices, who officiated at the third wedding of Rush Limbaugh. I think it was in Clarence Thomas's house. And Clarence Thomas, tell anyone that asks him, no, I don't listen to mainstream media, I don't trust it. But he taped Rush Limbaugh's radio show all 3 hours and would try to always listen to that. Now imagine this, you're a Supreme Court justice deciding on things like war and peace and civil liberties and gay marriage, and your window to the real news world is Rush Limbaugh's 3-hour monologue. That's pretty damn scary. There was a sense of seamless argumentation that this guy is giving me the complete explanation. And he's got facts and studies to back it up. And I'm listening to him 3.5 hours a day. When we put out our study in 1994 debunking dozens of these lies or distortions or exaggerations from Rush Limbaugh, we encountered thousands of ditto heads. Now, the cult-like nature is obvious when a guy is preaching for hours at a time and people come on, instead of saying amen, but just like saying amen, they say dittos rush, mega dittos rush. That's their contribution. It's like, here's the preacher, and I'm part of the cult, the congregation, and I'm just amening with this phrase, dittos or mega dittos rush. You're the greatest, Rush.
Did they actually say that?
Oh, they go on the air, and they say, mega dittos Rush.
Oh, that's why they call them ditto heads.
Yes. In other words, everything you say, I'm dittoing.
Hey, Rush, how are you? Mega dittos.
Thank you, and mega dittos, Rush. Mega constitutionist dittos from Southern California, Rush.
Mega dittos, Rush. We're gonna mega dittos you. Guys, this is where we get to have fun, because what station is Rush on? He's on WLAD Radio 80 in Danbury. And like I said, today I listened to the Dave Ranelli show from 8 to 9 o'clock. And I got to be honest with you, I really didn't, they had the national news and stuff. At 8:10 they had the business news, then they had 8:12 was sports, 17 was traffic weather. And then Dave starts to do a voiceover, and at 8:18, we got a call. Around the sun is settled. Dorothy, we got to forge ahead. But call back later, honey.
Bye with your banter. Take care.
Bye-bye. All right, so guys, we're getting back to WLAD now, and that's Dorothy, our buddy Dorothy. It's going to take a while. Why? Because she's been brainwashed. She's been indoctrinated. And they've done a very good job. And hey, guys, I have to take my hat off to Fox News and Talk Radio and the Conservative Party. Because, they do stuff that you would never even think of. Like if I told you that every Wednesday morning, Grover Norquist held a meeting, a conservative meeting, every Wednesday for the past 20 years. And this is where they get their talking points from. Smaller government, less taxes. They drum it over and over again. And guys, getting back to WLAD with Dave, he said he was going to try to think like a liberal. He couldn't think like a liberal if he tried. Why? Because he's not a critical thinker. He doesn't question anything. And that's the problem. I don't know, maybe he's homeschooled. He's certainly one of the simple folk, but I mean, when you don't question anything, and just like Dorothy with global warming, do you think that she would sit down and Google what NASA has to say on global warming? Do you think she would Google what the National Academy of Sciences said about global warming? The science is settled. The science is settled except for the people that watch Fox News and listen to hate radio. It's that simple. And why? Because they're told the same thing. They're ditto heads over and over and over again. But getting back to Dave, and he's saying he's going to be a liberal. He said, what would happen if the Donald Trump supporters did the same thing that the Bernie supporters were doing? In other words, he's insinuating that the people that are causing the riots at the Bernie rallies, at the Trump rallies, are Bernie inspired and it's Bernie's fault. And I'm saying to myself, you got to be kidding me. So then let's see. Then they went to they went to another commercial. 8:28, they had the news. And then I spoke to Dave during the break. And when I spoke to Dave, like I told you, he hung up. But I said to him, I said, Dave, what do you think about the movie, The Brainwashing of My Dad? Well, of course, he never heard of it. And if he heard of it, do you think he'd watch it? No. And you know why they won't watch it? Because they're afraid.